Hello out there to all my anarchists and fascist dickbags. Thank you for joining me for the 7th episode of my Last of Us review series. My name is Dan Bennett. This is the Real Dan Bennett YouTube channel. If you've been following along, you know that we've covered episodes 1 through 6 up to this point. We're going to dive into episode 7 right now. As we catch up with Joel and Ellie, what we see is sort of the aftermath of what we saw in the last episode where Joel falls off the horse. And so there's sort of blood stains strewn about, some snow leading up to a house. In the basement that he is still worse for wear. He's kind of shivering. It's cold. It's winter. Ellie is standing over him. Joel takes her hand and says, go north, go back to Tommy. And he tries to usher her away so that in his mind she doesn't see him die. She gets back to somewhere safe and she can finish out the journey we started. She goes up the stairs and she pauses and you see the gears kind of turning as she debates what the right course of action is. Leave the person I care about or honor his potentially final wishes. From there we jump back in time, and this is where we get to see a little bit of Ellie when she was still in the Fedra Preparatory Academy. They're running their morning laps and she's got a Sony Walkman that she got from somewhere on her hip, and she's listening to some music as she runs, and her regular bully, I guess, kind of comes up and antagonizes her and tells her to pick up the pace. She insinuates that Ellie's friend isn't here anymore. Ellie gets a little emotional and she clocks the girl. And she's in the office of the captain. They have a conversation where he basically drafts out her future for her. Says, look, you're a smart kid, but you're either going to be bottom of the barrel or you're going to be cream of the crop. She goes to bed for the night, and in the middle of the night, somebody comes in through the window, covers her mouth, and what do you know? It's Riley, played by Storm Reed. Riley was mentioned by Marlene in episode 1, and this is our first time really seeing her in person, but you immediately get the impression that these two are in fact best friends. We get to see a side of Ellie here that has kind of eluded us up to this point, where she's expressing genuine concern, genuine regard for Riley, that we didn't see her commit to anybody else up to this point, because otherwise she's been sort of a lone wolf as long as we've known her. They talk a little bit, and Riley reveals to Ellie that she has gone and she has joined the Fireflies. Rocking their logo here on my little pin. She says, listen, I want you to come with me. I want to give you the best night of your life. You just have to trust me. And after some banter, Ellie ultimately decides to go with her. So they climb down the fire escape, and they find a guy who apparently mixed some whiskey and pills and died. They talk a little bit more about how Riley got roped into the Fireflies. They do some amateur parkour, and then lo and behold, there we are at the final destination, the mall. Riley kicks on the generator, and she sends Ellie into the building, and Ellie, as all the lights come on, is just mind blown. She's never seen something quite like this. And they go, and this is Riley's goal, is to show her the 4 wonders of the mall, but Ellie is also wildly mesmerized by an escalator, so I guess there's 5. They play a little bit on the way down the escalator as Riley takes her toward the first wonder. As they head that direction, they talk a little bit about when Outbreak Day happened, how people came into the mall and they looted this store but not this store, and why, and all this. They talk about how they took the essentials, sneakers, lingerie, but left behind things we don't need like soap. As they have their little banter, Riley heads off and Ellie checks herself out in a window because she wants to look nice. This is sort of our first inclination as to how Ellie really feels about Riley. Riley takes Ellie by the hand. She leads her to the carousel that's in the middle of the mall, and she cranks it on. They get on some horses and they talk a little bit more, but we see as that conversation kind of ends, Ellie just looking up at Riley with a certain amount of admiration in her eyes, and you can tell she's feeling a specific way about Riley. It's unclear whether or not Riley feels the same way, so she's still kind of keeping it close to the chest. The carousel breaks down and they have another little heart-to-heart, and this is where Riley tells Ellie that the reason that she left Fedra is she was looking for a greater purpose, but the only thing she misses about Fedra is Ellie. And in that moment, she then coaxes her on toward the next of the wonders of the mall, and that is a photo booth off to the side. They take some pictures, the photos drop out. They're not great, as one would imagine after 20 years of non-use. That it's a little faded, but Ellie looks at it and she likes it because, you know, it's something the two of them did together. With photos in hand, we head on down to the arcade where there is music blasting. Riley reveals that she broke into the change machine and hey, we got quarters. So they go around the corner and we saw a Mortal Kombat 2 poster on Ellie's wall in the opening of the episode. And lo and behold, there's a Mortal Kombat 2 console tower right here. They pop some quarters in, they play a round of Raiden versus Melina in Mortal Kombat 2, and Riley just kicks Ellie's ass. They decide to play a second round, but as that's happening somewhere else in the mall, there's an infected, and that infected wakes up. We cut back to the two of them playing their other round of Mortal Kombat, and this time Ellie picks up the win. They have another intimate moment, and then Ellie says, hey, maybe we should wrap it up for the night. Riley, not willing to let it go so easily, says, nah, I got you a gift. This is where we find out that Riley is actually where she got the pun intended to joke book. They share a couple of the jokes, one of which doesn't land because they don't know what computer and screenshots actually are. Ellie discovers a stash of explosives that the Fireflies have in the mall, and she storms off. Riley chases her down and tries to explain the reality of why she brought her here, and she says, look, I brought you here because tonight's my last night in Boston. They're sending me out to Atlanta, and I wanted to say goodbye. And Ellie is heartbroken, but she emotes with anger, and she says, well, you said goodbye, I'm out. She starts to leave. She heads back toward where they came in from, and then she thinks better, and she heads back in. She starts to hear a scream in the distance, so she takes off running, thinking it's Riley. She comes into this Halloween store, and it turns out it's just a Halloween animatronic. But Riley's right there. So they talk a little bit more, and this is where we get a lot more of the relationship building between these two that shows us how close they really were. This conversation is where they really get to hash out their motivations and their perspectives on each other's approach to life and their vision of what the world should be. Ellie kind of gives Riley her blessing. Begrudgingly, but still nonetheless gives her the blessing. And so this is the closure these two characters kind of need. And then they move on to the final wonder. Riley gives Ellie a werewolf mask. She puts on a clown mask. She starts some music and they start dancing on the display case of this Halloween store. It's a cute moment. You see these two teenagers who may or may not be into each other, but they're definitely best friends, coming to terms with the fact that life is taking them down two different paths. As they dance a little bit, Ellie finally says, you know what? She takes off her mask. Riley takes off her mask because Ellie doesn't want to let her go. She pleads one last time, please don't leave me. And Riley decides in that moment, okay. Ellie, overcome with, I guess, gratitude, leans up and she kisses her. She steps back, she apologizes, and Riley shows in this moment, no, we're good. This is a two-way street. Then there's some noise off to the side. Riley takes out her gun, and the infected that we saw wake up in the toy store comes clambering through, and he attacks them. Infected attacks Riley one more time, and that gives Ellie a chance to knife him in the head. We take a beat to just sort of breathe, and Riley looks down at Ellie's arm, and we see the bite that we're so familiar with. And Ellie starts to panic, and she's rubbing away the blood, as if this can't possibly be real. And what makes it even worse is Riley also got bitten on her hand. So they're both infected to their knowledge. We cut. and go back to shivering Joel. And this gives us a very clear parallel between these two stories now, because this is the loss that Ellie has experienced in life. She was in love with this girl. They were best friends. They were about to enjoy what time they could get together. And it was cut short. She's not ready to let Joel go either. And so she's standing at the top of this stairwell, and she thinks about it. She goes, nah, this is the only other person I've cared about. And so she starts digging through the house, the kitchen, the bathroom, looking for anything that will help her save his life. Before she finds anything, we cut back again to the flashback of her and Riley. And Ellie is just going bananas, breaking the display case they were dancing on. And she's beside herself. Riley, who has experienced loss and death before, is just sitting on the ground, defeated, but I guess familiar with it. Ellie goes and she sits down with her, and this is where they have an exchange with the game fans who played the Left Behind downloadable content are familiar with. Maybe we can just be poetic and lose our minds together. And they just embrace each other. And this is where we cut back again to Ellie digging through the house, and she finds a spool of thread with a needle. She hurries back down, and she goes to Joel, shows him the thread, and without speaking any words, there's this understanding of, no, we're sticking together. And she starts to stitch him up, and obviously there's no anesthesia, so he's not having a great time, but it is what it is, and given the circumstances. And so she's stitching him up, and we cut to the credits. As far as storytelling goes, this is another solid installment in the show. It gives us a very rich understanding, comprehension of Ellie and what she has been through and why she's sort of conflict and affection averse. It also is a building block and a milestone for her within her relationship with Joel, that no, this is absolutely a person that she cares about, and they're essentially family at this point. So she's doing anything she can to sort of get him back from death's door, and we're going to see some more of that going into the next episode. Now, as far as this episode goes, I personally would say that beginning to end, probably the weakest of the episodes we've gotten so far, which is not to say it was a bad episode. I just think that we did a little bit better in the other episodes to progress the story, to highlight the relationships, to develop our groundwork. And this one kind of feels a little removed, which makes a certain amount of sense because of the fact that Left Behind is outside of the core story. They did a wonderful job in its own right. I do think that this one's a step down from what we've gotten up to this point, but not bad by any means. Now, moving into the next episode, we saw in the teaser that we are going to deal a little bit more with Joel's recovery, but also a man named David, who anybody who has played the game knows we're in for a ride. We're going to see Troy Baker in that episode with his role in the series, so that should be fun. I look forward to the next few episodes wrapping up this chunk of Ellie and Joel's story. So let me know down in the comments how you feel about episode 7, where it ranks among the episodes we've gotten so far. Let me know who your playable character would be in Mortal Kombat 2. If you don't know, give it a Google search, drop it below. Give me a like and a subscribe if you want to follow along for the last few episodes of Season 1. And I look forward to engaging with you guys as you come in. My name is Dan Bennett. This is the Real Dan Bennett YouTube channel. I thank you for following along, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.